Hey crafty friends, this is Chelsea. Welcome to today's video. If you are anything like me, then you probably have a collection of products kicking around your craft room that you have never used. Now, for me, this is the Gnomes for Winter collection from close to my heart. I fell in love with the beautiful pattern papers, so I got the whole bundle. The sticker sheet, the super cute gnome die, the stamp sets, and I'm like, I have to get this thing used. I have to crack into it. So I printed off some pictures. These are from October this year. Look at all of that snow. It was like October 23rd, and we had this huge dump of snow. Oh, and I forgot to show you, there's also these super cute acrylic snowflakes in this collection. This video is a collaboration with the creative design team. I will link the playlist at the end of this video so you can see everyone's projects where they're using products that they have never used before. To start us off, I wanted to use some of the beautiful pattern paper as the base to my layout. I couldn't decide which way I wanted my stripes, so I'm going to do it both ways. I cut my white daisy cardstock down to 11 by 11 and a half, just so I could have a little bit of a border around the three sides. And then of course, I don't want to waste all that paper in the middle, so I am going to gut my paper. Now, this isn't usually something I leave in my videos, but I thought maybe if you don't usually gut your paper, you would find this helpful. You might notice that I'm not equally measuring. The first cut was at 1¼ inches, the second cut was at 1½, but it doesn't really matter because as long as you have a thick enough band there, it will be hidden by the white cardstock. So I stuck that down, and then I also chose some of the pattern papers, and I cut those at 2 by 8 inches. And I just wanted to have a variety of the patterns. That blue with the snowflakes is definitely my favorite. It did hurt my heart a little bit to cut into it. I was tempted to just hoard it. But I also went ahead and cut out some of these pieces for the gnomes. So the beards I cut out of linen cardstock. The base here is out of shortbread. All you're going to see of that is just the hands basically. And the kind of main piece with the hat is out of periwinkle, and the beard, like I said, is linen. And then, oh, I did cut the nose out of shortbread as well. And then the skates are cut out of mist cardstock. So you could definitely cut these out of whatever you'd like. You could do it out of pattern papers. You could do it all out of white and color everything if you wanted to. Now, the one thing is there's a little hole where his mouth is supposed to be, and it looked weird to have that blue. So I punched a little circle with the like a 1/2 inch circle punch. I could have also used the die for the nose. That would have done double duty. I didn't actually think of that until just now, but I cut out some peach cardstock for that. Now, this is kind of as far as my ideas went. I knew I kind of wanted to have photos scattered across the layout, kind of going up and down and having a couple of gnomes tucked in between my photos. And so I started playing around. I tested out some border options. I really like Sapphire cardstock for a border or a mat on my photos. But this photo, I felt like I needed something bigger, that it was getting lost in all the pattern and the gnomes and everything. So I printed out that photo as 4 by 6, and I like that way more. When I can, I like to have my subject in the photos looking in towards the layout instead of off the edge of the layout. Sometimes it just doesn't work, but that's what I try to do. So you'll see on the left, both of those photos, my daughter's kind of slightly looking over to the right. And then over on this page, I wanted to put the picture of me shoveling at the bottom, because otherwise it looks like I'm shoveling off the layout, and I didn't like the way that looked so much. But I felt like I needed another bigger photo, so I did a 4 by 4 of that photo at the bottom. And then what I did was I actually reprinted the photo of me. I flipped it in my editing, and then I reprinted it so that I'm actually shoveling inwards towards the left on my layout. And no one will know, but it just flows a little bit better. This white piece here I want to use for my title because I want to stamp my title. It is actually a die cut from the Slimline Shaker thin cut set, which is meant for Slimline cards, but it works perfect as a title piece. I love this Winter is Here from the stamp set, and I'm definitely going to stamp that there. I was looking for something else to put my journaling on. So I grabbed another die cut from my stash. I have a few that are just like in a drawer already die cut. I was also looking at the sticker sheet. There's a couple of options on there. I thought the one with the trees might work. It's kind of a circle shape. I wasn't sure if I have enough room to fit all my journaling, but I'm going to keep that as an option because nothing is stuck down yet. Now I pulled out this Triangle Trees bundle. It has a stamp set, a die set, and a layered stencil. Now I have used this, but I have not used the stamp set and I have not used the die set. I've only used the stencil, and I have not gotten nearly as much use out of this as I was hoping to. So I'm going to bring it into my layout today. I am just going to use as many things as I possibly can. I always feel better the more I use my supplies because, cost per use goes down the more you use your stuff. And I love these. I think they're beautiful. And I was debating if I wanted to stencil trees onto my background, but I think it'll work better to stamp and die cut. I love products that all work together like this, and they just give you more creative options. I'm kind of testing out placement to see where I want to put these trees and how it's going to work out size-wise. I'm also testing out some of the stamps to see if maybe I want to add those onto the background. This is usually how I kind of figure out what I want to use before I commit to actually stamping. Just kind of lay stamps around or dies around and see if it's going to work how I imagine in my head. I will make sure to link all the supplies that I'm using down below. I know for a fact those Triangle Trees, the stencil and the stamp set are still available. The dies are sold out, so you can't get the whole bundle, but you can get most of the products still. Now, I wanted to add some shading, so I started out with Shortbread ink on the Shortbread little nose there, and it was looking kind of dirty, so then I grabbed peach, and I added some peach over top to give it, that kind of cold weather. You got your nose, it gets kind of pink, but I didn't like it just peach, so what I ended up doing is just mixing the Shortbread and the peach, and that gave me the perfect color. I was happy with that combination, so I just kind of had to go back and forth a little bit with my ink blending brushes. And then for the beard and the mustache, I decided to sand it. So I did put a clean piece of sandpaper onto my Tim Holtz sanding grip here. And you could use any kind of sandpaper or sanding block, but look at the texture that gives. It's really fun too because some of the edges, they get a little bit almost frayed. So it gives a little bit more texture than if I just shaded it with a pencil or a marker or something like that. Just something a little bit different to spice it up, add some white to that beard and mustache, and I love how that turned out. My design was definitely inspired by the products this time. Sometimes I start with a story or start with photos, but this one I'm starting with product, and I wanted to make sure those gnomes were a prominent part of my layout, but I didn't want them to take over. So that's why you're kind of only seeing 1.5 gnomes. I didn't want to have too many on there because they are quite large, and I wanted to make sure they still balanced well and the photos were still a major part of the pages. Now that I've added some shading to the nose, some texture to the beard, I also want to add some shading to this part because I think it would look kind of weird if it was completely flat and the other pieces were more dimensional. So I am taking Periwinkle ink on Periwinkle cardstock, and I'm just shading that inside part of the hat, and then I'm also going to go kind of on the underneath of the arms there. The other part is going to be hidden by the beard. The beard layers over top of that one, but I'm just trying to hit the underside of the arms to add a little bit of shadow there. This is kind of the biggest one. My other one is going to be hidden quite a bit, but this one I want to make sure I add some shading under those arms, and you'll want to do this before you go on to sticking everything together. Now I thought it would also be nice to add a highlight, so I grabbed a white gel pen and I'm just going along and adding a few dashes and a couple dots. I thought I'd just go along kind of the top of the hat and down the highlighted side there. This is kind of like a make it up as you go. I don't always do pen details because sometimes I'm I don't know how much to add or where exactly to put it, but I decided there's no wrong answer as long as I put it in the lighter space. And then I decided to cut off those skates. So I thought skates totally work because it's a winter layout, but I had another plan for a little scene that I wanted to create on this page to kind of be part of the story. And skates really didn't fit that story. There's no skating going on. So I decided to just cut them off and make them like little shoes on there instead of skates. I'm basically going to end up treating these little gnomes like supporting actors in my story. And I think it's just a really fun addition, especially since I'm scrapbooking my daughter. Now I figured I need some shading on here, so I grabbed mist ink and I just grabbed a foam inking tool. With small pieces like that, it's just really hard to use blending brushes, so I just used one of the foam ink blending tools, and that worked really good to shade the bottoms. And now I'm going to start sticking it all together. I didn't worry about shading his hands because barely anything is showing, and I don't think it will be a big deal. So I'm just going to start sticking these pieces on with my glue. I like using glue because I have a few seconds to kind of wiggle it around and get it perfectly positioned. I did debate if I should add some pieces with foam tape or like thin foam tape, but I decided against it and I just layered everything up flat with glue. I kind of thought about it either for his mustache or for the nose to add some foam, but I didn't do it. I think it would be interesting to try that out and see how it looks, but I think there is enough definition just from the inking and the sanding that I did. These little guys are so much fun to create and to build and put together. I have so many ideas for different combinations and different things I could do. This is definitely kind of like a paper dolls sort of thing where you could just play, and I think I might make a few of these for my daughter. I think she would enjoy using them on her art projects, or even putting them on popsicle sticks and using them like little puppets. My second gnome is pretty much the same, except it has Sapphire cardstock, and so I wanted to use a darker ink. I grabbed Intense Black, and I'm glad I did. I don't think the Sapphire would have shown very much, so I added a nice dark shadow with the black, and then I just glued it together like I already showed you. Now I am sanding a piece of jade cardstock. You can see the lines showing up there. That's because I have some deep cut lines in my Versamat. So once I saw that was happening while I was sanding, I tried to move my paper around and avoid those grooves. But I picked up this tip from my friend Erin, Crafty Concepts with Erin, to sand your cardstock and then stamp on it, just to add a little bit of texture and a little bit of interest without having to color your images, and just adds a little extra something. So I am going to place all these triangle trees and fit all of them on this one piece and then pick it up with my stamp platform to stamp it. I am using the pine ink, so it's just a little bit darker than the jade color. I didn't want to do tone on tone. I wanted it a bit darker, but not as dark as like black or something. So I gave that a really good stamping. I had to use quite a bit of pressure to reach all of the stamps. And there we go. We have them all stamped out, and then there's coordinating dies. So I'm just going to position the dies and use some washi tape to hold those in place as I run them through my machine. Now, I didn't figure out ahead of time what sizes or how many I needed. I just kind of thought I'll do them all and then make it work with what I have. So I'm going to start out just creating a little forest behind my gnome here. For placement, I want it to go right down to the edge of the pattern paper to kind of be right around his foot there. So it kind of looks like there's ground right below the trees. I'm getting away with using a smaller tree at the top because it's tucked behind his hat anyways and you won't see it. Now I wanted to match this on the opposite page and do another little arrangement, same thing, kind of lining it up with the bottom of the pattern paper and just carry on that horizon line. And then I need a third point, so I'm going to put some behind my other little gnome. Same thing, I can use some of the smaller trees in this spot just because they're going to be partially hidden by the gnome anyways. Now I did fuss around with these quite a bit. Eventually they do end up in pretty much the same arrangement, but you got to try everything out and adjust everything. Now here is where my story comes in for the gnomes. So I'm grabbing that 1/2 inch circle punch again, and I am punching some white glitter paper. I had some scraps in my drawer, and I'm going to make little snowballs. So I'm going to put one in the gnome's hand, and then down here where the trees end and his foot is, it just looks kind of weird, and there's kind of this weird gap, so I filled it with a little stack of snowballs. So the idea is he is throwing snowballs across the page, and our little Sapphire gnome up there, the snowballs are flying over his head, and that's why he has that surprised look on his face with the, oh. And yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking when I was doing this. And then I put some more snowballs over on this side just to kind of balance it out. And, they have to land somewhere. Now, I put that sticker down on the right-hand page, and I just was not loving how that was working. So I grabbed out the circle with the trees on it for the journaling, and I decided to put it over on the left-hand side and then just put the sticker with the saying over on the right. And then things were still feeling kind of empty-ish, so I went and grabbed some of those acrylic snowflakes and scattered them around. You can see they're kind of scattered along the page in groups of like 2s or 3s. And now I'm going in with my stamps, and I'm going to be stamping a whole bunch of snowflakes in the Periwinkle color. I could have totally stopped without stamping the snowflakes. I mean, the edge of the title piece definitely needed something. I stamped the title in Sapphire, and I used my stamp platform because I wanted to stamp it twice and get it nice and dark. And now I am using the 4 different sizes of snowflake that came in this set, and I'm just alternating them, kind of making sure they're not at the same height, offsetting them sort of in a triangle pattern, and alternating between larger and smaller ones, and just kind of going by feel, seeing what I think looks good, trying to fill in any little gaps. You can see I have not attached the trees or the gnome or anything yet. I wanted to make sure I was really happy with placement before I stick everything down, because now is the time to change things. Now, I'm glad I moved the journaling over. There ended up being kind of an awkward empty spot there. And same over on the left-hand page, you can see in the bottom left-hand corner, I added some more white snowflakes in there because those areas were just looking sort of empty. So I was able to fill in gaps with those acrylic snowflakes and then add even more with the stamped snowflakes. If you prefer things a little bit simpler, you wouldn't have to stamp the snowflakes, but more is more. I love adding extra details, and I love using my stamps to do it. Plus, it makes me feel really good to get more use out of my stamps. So it's just a win-win. I try really hard not to put my stamp sets away before they've been used. Sometimes I have to, but I try really hard to use every set that I get. And so when I can find a way to use even more stamps on a page or on some cards, that just makes me very happy. I would love to hear from you guys down in the comments. What is something that you want to get some use out of? Something that you have not used yet that's been sitting in your stash, or maybe it's a fairly new purchase, but something you're excited to use or you really want to get some use out of it. I stuck everything down and did my journaling off camera, and I'm just going to bring this closer so you can get a little bit of a closer look at it, see all the details. I love all the stamping and those gnomes. Oh my goodness. I just love how cute they are, and I love how the acrylic snowflakes really accent everything. They're white, so they're not too attention grabbing. I had debated stamping some of my snowflakes in Sapphire, and I'm glad I didn't. I'm glad I went with the Periwinkle, and it's not too bold. Now, if you're ready for more inspiration on using products you've never used before, click on the CDT playlist. And if you want to see how I use the Autumn Gnome, which is another die in this series, click on this video and you can see how I use that one. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.